Who else is here? There's Isabel. How are you? Doing okay? Okay. We'll give it 30 more seconds and see who wanders in. All right, in the meantime, whatever device you have, phone, tablet, some kind of weird implant that you got for Christmas in your head, you can go to the course website at courses.carlstaley, that's me.com/HCI, human-computer interaction. And today we'll go through the course policy statement, we'll go through the calendar, and we'll see what the shape of the course is going to be. All right, everybody got this URL? Can I move it? All right, I'm going to move it. You can also check your inbox if you were registered as of like this morning, because you should have an email from me with the course site and everything. Okay, so this is the course site for those of you who have not had me as an instructor before. Good luck. I do not use Blackboard. I will give you even more sermons this semester of why no one should ever use Blackboard. And it seems to me if we're going to do a class on human-computer interaction, Blackboard is like the worst. That would be like if I had a cooking class and we ate Big Macs all day, right? And then, I don't know, what do you do in a class? That's it, okay? So, nothing on Blackboard. Last semester I went through and put all the videos up on 361, but I did that after the fact. This semester, screw it. You never have to touch Blackboard for my class, so I'm going to pirate my class videos from Blackboard Online, so I will go there so you don't have to. And I'll just put them on YouTube, and I'll link them right off the course calendar so that they're right there. Okay? I believe in openness in instruction. I think it's a sham and a tragedy how little exposure, like most academic stuff, like, oh, blind peer review and all of this stuff. Usually the only people that see what goes on in a class is you guys. Like, how scary is that? So I am radically open with my syllabi, my materials, and now let's just go put the videos up there too. All right? So when you go to the course site, you'll always see the course calendar, but before we bother about that, let's actually look through the policies first so you can see what you've signed up for, and then at any point, if you want to leave because you're like, screw this, that's fine. Like, ad drop is what, Saturday or something? So you're always free to leave. All right. So here's the catalog description. Students in this course will learn the importance of human-computer interaction design and the effectiveness of user-centered design. The course will cover a survey of methods frequently used by the HCI profession, such as usability testing and prototyping, as well as general design principles and how to use design guidelines. A particular emphasis will be placed on usability for website engineering, and students will apply knowledge from the field in the design and construction of user-centered websites. So this is still a production course. We are not going to sit around and stroke our chins and think about like, wow, how terrible is that website? No, we're going to actually build stuff, right? That's the way that we make things better. There are too many highly paid consultants in the world whose job it is to sit around, collect large paychecks, stroke their chins, say how terrible a website is. It goes in a report somewhere, which then is filed away. The website continues to stuck, and then you continue to have my.iit.edu or whatever else abomination you have to log into to pay bills. Okay, so here's the extended description. I'm not known for being very concise. I talk a lot, so the extended description is much longer, much richer, and much more me. Okay, so additionally, this course favors a mobile-first approach to web design and development. So if you don't know what that is, because you didn't have 361 with me, don't worry. We'll get you up to speed quick. With special attention to the challenges of designing touchscreen interfaces. Ooh, get ready, Rosa. It's the first time my phone's coming out of my pocket, right? This is so fundamentally different than everything that's open like a clamshell in front of you, right? And this can be disgusting. Like one of the, I think hopefully it's still on there from last year. One of the things I require in this class, and ooh, let me see how big of a hypocrite I can be right out of the gate, Zach, and make sure I've got mine today. If this isn't on the course materials, I'm going to add it. It's a microfiber cloth. They cost like $1, and you can get them at Target, and you can keep your device screens nice and clean, right? People's phones are so gross. Like truly, epically I rode CTA today, and one of the things that I want to encourage all of you to do is to be creepy this semester and watch people on their phones. Watch how they hold the thing, right? You've got some people that do the kind of like prayerful double thumb grip like this. You've got the this person grip, but then you've got the person with like the fucked up, there we go, right out the gate. First day, fucked up, broken screen, and that's their phone, right? So if you're going to design an interface at your job that's meant to help onboard people, and it has tiny little font and really subtle use of color, and you can't see it when the screen is in 89 different pieces, then you failed. So we've got to think about how do we design for these things, and not only when they're nice and pristine and polished up and clean, but also when they're in less than an ideal state. All right? Okay. This is why it takes the whole day to get through the syllabus, Stolly, because you can't shut up. Okay. Students will learn development methods based on prototyping and rapid iteration, supported by version control and low-stakes usability testing. Has anybody ever, in any capacity, either as a test subject or a test runner, done usability testing before? Okay, what was it like?
Can you explain that?
Well, it's an open-ended question, but it was probably like a fairly high-stakes kind of thing. Were you a participant, or were you testing other people?
Oh, like in high school when we had to do a science fair.
Okay.
We gathered like subjects to.
And you watched them use like an interface or something? Yeah. So it's probably one-shot deal kind of thing. Yeah. Anybody done this like at work or on a project? Theo.
I work at OTS, so we were just helping test for the new Blackboard that just came on.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So that was a big thing. So we would see, like, you'd go on and see whatever, like, tab or section you click, what would happen.
Sure.
That was big testing.
Yeah, and that was the test, right? Like there's probably no more on the calendar coming up. Yeah, see, so that's the problem. Usability, people treat it like a wedding, right? You have a wedding, or a few, depending. But it's not like you have a wedding every day or every week or something like that, even if you stay married to the person. So we're going to look at low-stakes, quick, one-off usability testing that repeats instead of like these big, high-hatted kind of like, oh, today we're having the usability test. All right. The design principles the course will emphasize include color, material design, rich web typography, and responsive grid-based page layout. So it's back. I thought it was going away. It's back. Accessibility, progressive enhancement, and thoroughly researched use of edge technologies and polyfills will be treated as guiding techniques throughout the course. Okay, so we're going to move more into areas like Flexbox, areas like CSS Grid, which is awesome and now finally shipping, at least in the development nightlies of Firefox. I don't know if it's in the Firefox in the wild. CSS Grid will make you shake your fist in such anger about every element that you ever floated, every position absolute that you declared on something that then ruined your life on the rest of the page. But they're edge stuff, so we'll have to do feature detection and things like that. So we'll move more into that. Student work is organized around projects of varying size and scale, emphasizing the course's hands-on, theory-grounded approach to web design and development. All right? So that's the description. Are there questions at this point, or should we go through the outcomes and stuff and then see if there's questions? Are there questions yet? You're always free to interrupt with questions. Okay, so here are the outcomes. Students completing this course will learn to describe the diversity of information system users and tasks and their impact on design. Describe the core concepts, applicability, and cost benefits of user-centered design. Demonstrate how user-centered concerns can be incorporated into system development life cycles. Explain the need for, or the need to evaluate system usability. Describe and apply general principles of design. And last two, describe and execute touch-friendly, mobile-first, responsive web design, and understand and apply core theories from human-computer interaction to web design and development. Okay? So those are the outcomes. Then there's objectives. I'm unclear as to what the difference is, but I have to put these on here. So, objectives. Some more things. At the conclusion of this course, successful students will be able to recall, describe, and apply principles of user-centered design, conduct task analysis, and apply the information to user-centered design, I feel a spontaneous riff on that coming up. Here's the problem. How many of you ever heard, like, you need to design a rich, immersive user experience? Have you heard these terms before? Right? No? You will this semester. We'll read about some. Everybody wants to create, like, an app that really draws users into the app and it makes them really engaged, right? That never happens. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants an Uber app where you have to be immersed in the experience. You just want to get a car and get from point A to point B. All right? So any design, any extra tapping, any like offers, like, oh, if you sign up 2 friends, you get the next ride. No. Like, you're getting in the way of what the person actually wants to achieve. One of the things that we're going to look at this semester is activity theory, AT for short, which has a hierarchy that we can use to consider user behavior. So at the very top of the hierarchy, you have some activity that someone is engaged in. Okay? They want to get downtown, or they want to get to their friend's house, right? That's their activity, and it might be bigger because their friend is sick, or because their friend wants Netflix and chill, or whatever it is that they're doing, right? So there's all these other layers of what might be going on in the activity. Then there are the particular actions that this person engages, right? They pull their phone out of their pocket and the screen is all cracked and they open up the Uber app and they request an Uber through that thing, right? So we have these sort of discrete actions that are aimed at very specific goals, right? And at the lowest possible level, we have these things called operations, which are the unconscious things that you don't even realize that you have to do, right? You pick up your phone and you put your thumb on it and it's open and then you get to playing Muddy Waters, right? Whatever, okay? So most of our class is going to be looking at how do we make these things work really, really well. We don't want to impede on somebody's activity and make them spend more time thinking about our app, our interface, our series of hoops that they have to jump through just to accomplish something, right? We want to do what's called frictionless design, because those are things that people will genuinely love, right? Next time you go to myiit.edu or Blackboard or something, count how many steps, how many things you have to click on and drop down and select, right? I go to get my faculty schedule. What semester do you mean? What semester do you think I mean? This one, right? Select it automatically, and if I want to choose something different, give me that option, but just make sensible choices, right? Because that's the other side with user-centered design, is like, and you'll get these kinds of religious zealots around too, like, oh, the user, we must give them all the power. Most people don't really want a lot of power. Not when it comes to the Uber app, right? Otherwise, it would all be just one big command line interface on your phone. That's power, right? No, most people want sensible defaults. Where are you? Probably where I'm standing, right? Imagine what the Uber app would be like if you had to, like, figure out what address you were standing in. Right? That's power. That gives you a lot of control. It also gives you extra steps that you don't need in order to accomplish the thing that you want to accomplish. All right? Where was I? All right. Evaluate user interface designs with human subjects. So we'll get into the ethics of dealing with people. Recall, explain, and apply the design principles of alignment, contrast, proximity, and repetition, which I will refer to as CRAP design, because that's the acronym: contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity. CRAP. Those are really basic, low-level, grade, like kindergarten level. They're good to know, but we'll push beyond those kinds of things, right? Okay. Those are just the stock. Those are in the ITM catalog, so those have to be here. You will design and build a user-centered website applying HCI methods and good principles of design. You will apply color and typography. Ooh, some of my most favorite material in this course, Aaron, is color theory. So we're going to be reading from Joseph Alber's classic Interaction of Color, which came out like in the 60s, and it's all about like pigments and stuff, right? Like there wasn't a computer terminal around that could display color when that book came out. But it turns out that the way that color interacts with other colors still pretty much works the same way, because our eyeballs haven't changed all that much. All right, we'll do lots more with typography in this class. You know how much I love typography. We haven't even scratched the surface yet. All right, to optimize interfaces, you'll engage in agile, iterative web design and development supported by version control, because you know that I love version control just as much as I love typography. And you will write useful descriptive messages attached to granular commits in a version control system. So that is still true. questions about the overall shape, content, aims, goals, objectives, and outcomes of the course at this point? All right. Usually it's the same thing. Everybody's just on the edge of their seat to see what comes next. All right, so let's see what comes next. So required books. For those of you who haven't had me as an instructor before, I am explicit in how I choose books. Most professors, it's just a mystery, right? They want to drain your bank account. Usually seems to be the only straightforward thing. So here's my policy for assigning book. They are all required, okay? So we actually are going to read them. In the edition indicated, the total retail price tag for the entire course should be less than $100. That's kind of like my dollar amount. That's what I budget for myself and by extension you. All the books for the course, their total price tag less than $100. Last I checked, this one is $84 on the high end. Check Amazon, check other places, and if you opt for the electronic editions of things, you'll definitely score under $100. And then each book should be worthy of a place on your bookshelf or electronic device of choice long after the class has ended, right? This is why I don't assign textbooks, because textbooks are headed back to the bookstore at the end. You can still send these books back to the bookstore if you want to, but textbooks, you're almost guaranteed to sell those things back. I don't have any of the textbooks from when I was in school, right? Those went right back. So I choose books that are professional grade titles that you want to have so that you can start building your own professional library, right? Which I think is right up there. But I also want to be sensitive to your personal finances, right? Okay, so how many? I think there's 5 books for this class. So the 5 books are Josh Clark's Designing for Touch. That's another A Book Apart book. They do like $9 ebooks or something, and they're very well produced. That's a really interesting book. We will read Scott Jail's Responsive Design, which gets into the ethics of doing responsive design and designing responsively, not just by considering like screen sizes, but also things like what actions and activities people might be engaged in. We will read the classic 3rd edition of Stephen Krug's Don't Make Me Think, which is subtitled Revisited a Common Sense Approach to Web Usability. That's a really fun book. Ooh, I get to show you a book. Most of my books are electronic. This one, ironically, is called Type on Screen. Get it in print. The reason being that I don't even know if there is an electronic edition of this, and if there is, it sucks. It's still really difficult to represent screens on other screens. So get this one, Ellen Lupton, Type on Screen. Get this one in print. Highly worth your book purchasing dollar, and something that you'll refer to for years and years, any kind of typographical thing that you ever do, even if it's like putting type on a PowerPoint slide or something like that. This will give you all the things that you never knew, right? All right. And then the last book is Luke Wroblewski's Mobile First, which is a classic book, and it sort of undergirds the theory of why you begin by designing for the mobile experience instead of making some perverse huge desktop website that's meant to display on a 5K screen or something, and then think about like what the smaller one is. All right, so that's a good book. Also does a lot of the economics of mobile first design, which when you're interviewing or doing internships at companies, if you can talk about the economics of this stuff and why it makes good financial sense to do mobile first design, you'll scoop up jobs right away. All right, then we'll have other readings like the Joseph Albers Interaction of Color. Those will be made available to you electronically. All right, so required materials and technologies. So my usual blank-bound paper sketchbook. We'll use this a lot more because we're going to be doing a lot more intentional visual design and things like that, so you'll want to have something you can sketch on quickly. You'll need an email account that you check regularly. You'll need a Dropbox account, probably, maybe. You'll use a browser or cloud-based bookmarking scheme to aid your information management. A Basecamp account. Your invite will come by email, I think.
Yeah.
It did? Even if you're in 360, you were in 361, I added you to 362, you still got an email? Awesome, that's really good to know. Okay, so once you fill out that course survey, even if you were in class with me last semester, please just do it again. And then I'll send out invites. I sent out a batch of them this morning. I'll probably do some more tonight. Okay, so Basecamp is where we'll coordinate our work and communication in and outside of class. You'll need a GitHub account. You'll need that in order to do the course survey. The domain of your name, if you didn't buy it yet, buy it now. Not that we're necessarily going to be using that directly, just as a public service, like own your name. All right? And then a personal computer, ideally Unix-based, so Linux, BSD, OS 10, whatever flavor of Nix-like operating system you want to run, with the following software installed. So you'll need a plain text editor capable of syntax highlighting, set up to use UTF-8 encoding of the Unicode character set, and Unix-style line endings, LF, and tabbed with spaces, 2 spaces for tab. So all the stuff, for those of you who are in 361, don't worry, I'm bringing back all the linting tools and everything, so we'll continue to use that stuff. You'll want to use Firefox Developer Edition, you'll want to use Git, you'll want to use Node.js, and you'll want to use some kind of image editing software. You can use the free and open source and unfortunately named GIMP is one option. All right, and then as many different browsers as your operating system supports. We're going to get more, like last semester we really didn't talk about cross-browser testing or anything like that, but in this class we're going to be thinking about different browsers, different browser rendering engines, which it's an exciting time for rendering engines. Rosa, did you see the big announcement from Mozilla over the break? They're completely rewriting the Gecko engine. I forget the fancy name that they've given to it, but the post basically says that because they don't want to just like stop and switch engines, so they're kind of like piece by piece rewriting the engine behind Firefox, and they say it's like changing the engine on a jet plane while the plane is flying. So we'll read some stuff about that later on. Okay. Grading policy is 4 projects, which I think, looking at this, that may not be correct. I think I might only have 3 projects in this class. So we'll look at the projects page, and we can all be surprised to see how many projects are listed there. But they're usually between 15, 20 points apiece, something like that. You will, again, have weekly production problems like you did in 361 with me. These, though, it's great being a human being because you get to correct your past stupidities if you're lucky. And so one of the things that occurred to me as I was thinking about 361, I'm like, why didn't I make the production problems a little more closely aligned to the projects that you were doing? So that's what I'm going to do this semester, Moses. It'll be better for everybody, right? You thought that was stupid, didn't you? But you're just too nice. You wouldn't come to me and say, you know what's stupid about you, Carl? Your production problems. And I'd say, you're right. I thought about that too. All right. Basecamp participation, obviously in a class like this, with some people on video and whatnot, there's not a whole lot of opportunity for back and forth, so we will have lots of discussion of the things going on Basecamp. So however it comes out with 3 or 4 projects, the total will be 100 points, and the breakdown is pretty standard, 90, 80, 70. Okay? If you've not been graded by me before, here's how I do grades. Let's start at the bottom and talk about how you can fail. If you want to fail, you have to work hard. Not a single person in 361 failed the class. Now, a bunch of them dropped, right? But that's self-select, and then I don't have to feel bad about it, right? So students you have to commit yourself today. Sit down, go home, clear your head, and figure out how you're going to fail this course. Okay? If you want to fail, just don't turn in the stuff you're supposed to. Okay? It takes some work, but if you really put your mind to it, that's how you can fail the class. All right? If you want a D, just turn in everything you're supposed to, but make it kind of suck. All right? If you want a C, turn in everything you're supposed to and make sure it's acceptable as straight up undergraduate work. Right? There's no shame in that. I get that some people in here, like, you never want to touch another line of HTML as soon as I'm done with you. That's cool. Get a C. If you want a B, turn in everything you're supposed to and make it exceptional work. Do really good. I love really good work. Okay? Then we can really do some things with it. If you want an A, right, do that exceptional work, but then do the work in some way that's going to reflect your own personal interests and career ambitions, right? I don't know who you are as a person walking around this planet. I just come up with project descriptions. It's up to you to kind of like take those skeletal descriptions and run with it and do something interesting. If you want to do something that like wildly diverges from what I've got, let's have a discussion about it and we can figure out what that's going to look like. Okay? All right. So that's grading, my least favorite, least interesting part of the course. The way that assignment submission works is that all major projects will be submitted via email to me, as will your initial production problem. But your emails should not include attachments. This is not preschool, right? Your emails will include URLs pointing to your project's Git repository. So pretty much everything we're doing here will be all Git-based stuff. So please never, this semester or for the rest of your life, ever send me an email attachment, because I hate email attachments. But I love URLs, and I really love Git repositories. All right? And there may be a couple of assignments that will do Dropbox share URLs, but most likely it'll all be Git. So just reserve that in case something happens. All right? All HTML in project and production problem submissions must pass validation with the W3C HTML validator, which is not that big of a deal. I've kind of like gotten angrier and angrier all the time at how permissive the HTML5 validator is. We'll say that for this course. In future classes, it'll probably say the linter or something that we use in here, because to my mind, the validator is far too permissive and it lets people get away with murder that they shouldn't be allowed. All right? Any work whose HTML does not validate will receive a 0-point failing grade. In the unlikely event that you discover a validation error or warning that is a genuine bug in the validator, you must acknowledge the bug in the email that accompanies your project and point to the relevant documentation, such as specifications or an existing reputable bug report, that your source is in fact correct. Okay? Doubt that'll happen, but there's the fallback. All right? Get in the habit early of validating your HTML each time before you commit your work to Git. And we're going to use lint tools in here and stuff again, so we'll have a much better suite of things to make sure that the technical correctness of your code is in place. All right? Late work, I don't accept it. All work must be submitted before the date and time specified in each project description. Weekly work is due before the start of the first class meeting each week. All right? That's that. Participation. Any questions so far? Grades, grading, stuff like that. Pretty standard Stolly stuff. Participation, I expect you to participate actively in class. Like, if you're going to be in this room, please be sitting upright and awake. Otherwise, it just makes me feel bad, right? You don't want to talk to the top of somebody's head. If you're not feeling good, if you had a really great night, Sunday night, just like, hopefully you can pull it together by 3:15 in the afternoon, but if you can't, catch the video later, okay? I do not give reading quizzes. I think that they are insulting and a waste of your time, but I do expect that you'll have done the reading, okay? And we'll discuss that on Basecamp and things like that. Okay? I don't have an attendance policy. I'm probably breaking some kind of university rule for that, but I don't think it's fair that there are people taking an online section of this who can be in their pajamas all day long, or you could be like Manish here and come in your pajamas to class. Manish, believe me, I'd be in my pajamas too if I wasn't riding the train. So I don't take attendance. I'm not interested in being a police officer. So if you miss a class or something, the videos will be online. But as Rosa will tell you, you want to be here because it's so exciting and unpredictable as to what might happen, right? Okay. So that's attendance and participation. Course technology policy. This is mostly stuff derived from classes I teach over in humanities, where I have to like tell a few more people a little bit more emphatically that technology is important. This probably doesn't apply to you so much, but just for the sake of covering all bases, technology is an essential part of learning and day-to-day living. It is therefore essential to this class. You are just as responsible for learning to command various technologies as for any other course content, right? I know there are some professors like, oh, poor you, you had a disk corruption, or poor you, you couldn't get that package to install. Well, you'll get them next time. I don't make such distinctions. If you failed, if something doesn't work, it doesn't work. So fix it, right? Error messages are your friend. Watch for those things. Google their contents, right? I'm sure that Isabel is a very unique person in many, many ways. I'm also certain that any error message that Isabel could possibly come across on her computer, she's not anywhere near the first person to have encountered that error message, right? So pop those things into Google, figure it out, sort it out, and then become the small god in your family who everybody comes to when they have technology problems, all right? So you're just as responsible for the technology as any other course content. Difficulty with technology is not an acceptable excuse for being unprepared for class or late with assignments. If you're doing your job and using Git and pushing your commits remotely to Git with frequency, then you are never going to have, like, oh, my computer crashed, or oh, it got stolen on the bus, or whatever. Watch me, I'm going to go home now and my computer's totally going to get stolen on the bus, right? But it's my problem, right? And all my stuff, all my commits are on GitHub. They're all on another server where I keep other things, right? Always have a backup, right? All right, not acceptable excuses for being unprepared for class. That'll be what happens to me, Rosa, is I'll like get my laptop stolen on the way to class. Like on Wednesday, I'll show up and I'm like, I don't have my laptop. All right, I've always got a plan B. If you have trouble or if you are having trouble with technology or any other material covered in this course, it is your professional responsibility to do research beyond the resources and guidance provided in class and find supplemental materials that work for you. Or talk to me. I have this really twisted idea that you as students probably have questions and you probably should ask them. I know there's this culture of shame at IIT where professors get off and be like, you should know that because it was in the reading, or you should know that because you took Professor whoever's class and that was covered in there. I don't care. If you have a question, ask the damn question. Okay? Because I like to answer them and have a discussion and talk about your learning, all that stuff. That's the most rewarding part of being a teacher. Not this part. This part I kind of hate. I have to do it. But when I get a question, when I'm sitting around and watching the Blackhawks game or something like that, that makes me happy because then my brain gets to respond to another human being. All right? Okay. I encourage you to come meet with me during my office hour, which is 2 to 3 p.m. on Mondays. I'm changing it up, Rosa, from last semester. Color scheme and new office hour. It's on Monday from 2 to 3. However, that's like the worst way to get a hold of me. Hit me on GChat, WhatsApp, Skype, like whatever you prefer. Like set it up. Let's talk, okay? Much easier to reach electronically. You can also use the ping function that's built in the Basecamp, right? Had a couple of students that were hitting me up on there asking questions about web design over break. It was great. All right. And actually, one of those I still owe somebody a response. I will get to that. All right. All right. Note that coming to class with broken or malfunctioning work is far better than showing up with nothing but an excuse like I just didn't get it. Okay. So for much of the semester, it's expected you'll show up with broken work. That's why we're having this class, because you're not perfect, right? So we'll get to all of that. All right. When your learning effort is more important than perfection, just be sure to put in the effort early and not the night before a project is due. Okay. I've asked you all to sign up for GitHub accounts. If you've had class with me before, you've already got one. Note that GitHub accounts are public, as are most social type accounts. To protect your privacy, you are certainly allowed to use a pseudonym or alias. All right. You may also push to repositories that you keep private so long, of course, as you add me so I can see your work for grading purposes. At the same time, you might want to think about the high value of establishing GitHub and other accounts under your own name or professional alias, right? I helped a couple of different students with resumes over the semester, right? That's another thing I love to do is help people fashion their resume and make it strong and cover letters and things like that. And they're so excited to put their GitHub address on their resume, right? Everybody's got find me at linkedin.com/in, which is a weird URL pattern. Anybody ever thought about that? You find me at linkedin.com/in Carl Stolly. Gross, right? Who thought that was a good idea? Somebody did. It's terrible. All right? All right, so high value of establishing GitHub and other accounts in your names or professional alias. Public accounts where you conduct yourself professionally might well be an asset to your online presence, improving search results that future schools or employers turn up. All right? Okay. Any questions so far? Technology, grading, projects? Okay. This one's important. So as with any course at IIT, you are expected to uphold the code of academic honesty as described in the IIT Student Handbook. All work for this course must be your own original effort, including print and digital page design and computer code. If you were planning to come in here this semester and use Bootstrap for everything, which I can't believe I managed to get Bootstrap out of my mouth without dropping a whole tapestry of obscenities in front of it, think again, okay? We're about lean, bespoke design in here that's set to particular things, not often. Like, you use Bootstrap because you don't have the luxury of taking a class like this, right? So my brother, he's a programmer / lawyer, so he's a load of fun. But he, like last year when I was teaching this class, I was saying something about like people keep using Bootstrap, and he's like, Bootstrap, isn't that what you use when you don't take a class like that? I'm like, yeah, exactly. So I'm stealing that line from him and putting it in here. All right. So all work for this course must be your own original effort, including print and digital page design and computer code. Okay. Do not copy and paste JavaScript stuff that you find. It all sucks. It does. Like, JavaScript, like, everybody's like, JavaScript is such a stupid language. No, there's a lot of stupid people who write JavaScript, and then they post it online and invite you to use it. And it's like the worst, broken, malformed, rockin' in 1994 Netscape Navigator code you've ever seen in your life, right? We don't want to do that, okay? All right. So, but if you do find something that's good, or if you're using summarizations or quotations of text or any open source code libraries and images not of your own making, they should be clearly cited as legally and ethically warranted and rhetorically appropriate. Access, storage, dissemination, and other use of data from third-party sources must conform to the source's terms of service, licensing, and other relevant legal and ethical restrictions. If you are at all uncertain as to whether you are submitting work that in whole or in part may violate the Code of Academic Honesty, please contact me immediately and before the work is due, okay? Once that's in, it's submitted, okay? Don't make me play detective. I've been teaching this web design stuff for God, Rosa, 15 years now. I know student work when I see it. I also know stuff that was somebody else's that got stolen from a template when I see it, okay? You will get caught. Don't make me play that, because I hate that. Because I open up your project, look at the source code, and the first thing I say, I'm like, damn it, this is not theirs, right? Oh, and look at their GitHub repository. They went from 3 lines of source code in this JavaScript file to 300 lines of source code in this JavaScript file. They must have really been inspired that 5 minutes between commits. Okay. Any student who violates the Code of Academic Honesty will be subject to expulsion from this course with a failing grade, and I will report the student to the Dean of the School of Applied Technology, who may take additional disciplinary action, including reporting violations to the relevant offices of undergraduate or graduate academic affairs, depending on whether you are an undergraduate or a graduate. All right. Clear on that? Okay. Special needs statement. I place a very high value on developing courses that are welcoming and accessible to all students, okay? If all you have in your life is a phone, you can probably actually complete this course. It'll be difficult, but you could possibly do it. I will make reasonable accommodations for students with documented disabilities. In order to receive formal accommodations, students must obtain a letter of accommodation from the Center for Disability Resources. There's all of their contact information. Students who have any difficulty, either permanent or temporary, okay, it's winter time. We all know that the snow removal at IIT is not the greatest in the world. People slip and fall and break their wrists and all kinds of horrible things happen. When that happens, not 3 weeks after that happens and I haven't heard from you, when that happens, right, get an email to me. If you can't type because your wrists are broken, get your friend to type it. I'm serious, right? I've had that student, I totally wanted to be in your class, but I broke both my hands. Okay, but it happens. People get hurt, right? It's terrible. You should still be able to pass the class. Find somebody who's willing to type a 2-sentence email. Hi, this is my friend Jem. Type it for me because I broke my hands, right? I want you to be able to succeed, but you've got to, it happens. You laugh. Somebody's going to end up like that. I'm going to feel so bad. But come on, I want to help you, right? If something horrible happens, life happens, I get it, we all have lives. Let me know, in person, electronically, and let me know, and I will adjust methods, materials, and deadlines as necessary to ensure everyone's equitable participation, okay? I can move a lot of mountains for students. I cannot turn back time, okay? So if it's a week from the end of the semester and I haven't heard from you since spring break, you're going to get this, oh, sorry. Should have emailed me when you broke your hands. All right. Okay. Let's look at the calendar next, unless there are any questions about the policy. Everybody's got the giggles today. You doing okay? Yeah? All right. All right, so course calendar will always show the current week. So today, welcome and introductions. We're doing course policies and calendar, and then if there's any time left over after I'm done editorializing every 5 minutes, we'll do some basic course technology setup. Wednesday, we're going to review valid, semantic, well-formed HTML from 361. We'll relook at the MDN HTML reference. I will talk about forbidden tags and patterns, right? Don't want to use any forbidden tags, right? I do have some that I forbid, right? And particular patterns, and a lot of them are organized around HTML forms, because of course if we're doing an HCI class, then a lot of the things that we're going to be working with are form elements and things like that, so we're going to look at those things, and particularly we'll look at patterns that you don't want to use when you're putting those kinds of forms together, okay? People truly show their amateur status with HTML when it comes to HTML forms. Because, like crap JavaScript, there are no shortages of crap HTML forms laying around out there. You probably interacted one today, right? All right, so we'll look at some of that stuff. And then we'll look at linting. Next week we have MLK. Okay, then there's always the assigned work. So your assigned work for this week, which I always do it by the week. I'm a realist. I don't think anybody's going to rush home and do homework tonight for class on Wednesday, so my assignments are always by the week. So if you're an online student, you need to read through all the stuff that we just read through. We'll start by reading the Wroblewski Mobile First book, the introduction and part 1, which is chapters 1 through 3. And then I invite you to get together. Let's see, we got to do some color work here. That's not popping the way I wanted it to. Not at all. All right. So go through the MDN documentation for web technology for developers, and then you've got some things to do. So you need to submit that survey and contract if you've not done that yet. And then you need to create a Basecamp account if you don't have one. If you had one from 361 with me, then you'll just be able to continue using that. And then if you have not set up an editor and Git and Node.js on your computer, you need to do those 3 things as well. Okay? So that's always how assigned work works. Next Monday, we do not have class because of the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. But then when we come back on Wednesday, we will do our day of CSS-based review. We'll look at the MDN CSS reference. We'll look again at relative units in CSS. If you did not have 361 with me, you know that the pixel unit is forbidden in CSS because we do responsive-based design and pixels cannot be trusted anymore, nor can they be used. So we'll look at M-based units. We'll look at percentage-based units. We'll also look at viewport height and viewport width units. And we'll look at the one fringe case where you have to use pixel units. It's on the max width property, right? If you did that in percentage, it would never actually do what you wanted it to because setting a max to a percentage just means it keeps getting bigger. Okay. We'll also look at media queries if you've not done media queries before, and we'll talk about CSS linting. Next week you will read Marcote's classic responsive web design article. And we'll start reading from Scott Jail's Responsible Responsive Design, the introduction and chapters 1 and 2 of that. You'll also get your first production of problem assigned next week. All right. Week 3, we're going to do a day on JavaScript review. And particularly, we'll look at unobtrusive JavaScript. We'll look at events in the event loop. And we'll talk about hinting and linting our way through JavaScript. And then Wednesday, the 25th, will be our last day of kind of review-ish, getting our bearings again material, and we'll do that on responsive web design. We'll talk about finding versus choosing breakpoints, right? All the bad advice that you've ever gotten about responsive web design. It's like, well, an iPhone is this many pixels across, and a Galaxy Note Explodio 7, whatever it is, model is this many pixels. Right now, we want to design not to devices. We want to look at the actual design of the thing we're making and create breakpoints based on where the design falls apart. All right? We'll do some more stuff with sizing and layouts on that. And we'll start reading more of Mobile First, and we'll start the Touch book. Week 4, which gets us into February, that's the week we'll spend talking about touchscreen interfaces, form elements, and responsive layouts. The road to hell is paved by the native display of form elements on phones. They're terrible. Like, I don't understand it, Manish. Like, if you're Apple or if you're Google, and you do all this work to design a nice browser, a nice phone, and then you basically bring over the same ugly default form elements that are totally unusable. So we'll look at styling that stuff that week. So we'll do touchscreens on the 30th, and then we'll look at form elements with CSS styling. And the road to hell. See how often you get that on a course calendar. It truly is the road to hell. We're going to be using JavaScript and some progressive enhancement techniques because, I mean, does anybody know why it's so hard to style HTML form elements? There's this really weird thing, and this actually goes back to some of the very earliest web browsers, right? If you look at controls inside of your Windows operating system or your OS X operating system or even your GNOME desktop and things like that, certain types of controls, right? We've got our drop-down menu. We've got even like text input boxes or search boxes, right? Like in Mac OS. These are actually not native to the browser. They're not executed in CSS. They're actually derived from the exact same controls at the operating system level. So while there are certain ugly vendor prefix things that we can try to do to resize a checkbox or to change the control on a drop-down menu, most of those things are pretty hardwired into the operating system, whatever devices that they're running on. So what we'll end up doing is using a little JavaScript switcheroo so that we can drop in a nice box that gets an X in it when we tap it, instead of a checkbox or something like that. But we'll do this in a progressively enhanced way so that these controls remain there for people who need them or who don't have access to JavaScript or whatever. This is going to be really fun stuff. You're going to hate it, but it's so good. And it will make you like a small god when it comes to styling form elements. All right, we'll look at form elements within responsive layouts. That's another real tricky area. Let's see, week 5, so we're deeper into February. We'll do a week on typography. That Monday we'll talk mostly about setting type on content to make it readable and attractive and actually try to persuade people to read the stuff that's on your site. And then on that Wednesday we'll talk more specifically about typography for user interfaces. So what goes into choosing a typeface for buttons or for controls or things like that. So that'll be that week. Week 6, I will be delirious with happiness because we'll be doing color all that week. So we'll look at the different color models in CSS. We'll look at color interaction. Wednesday, we will look at developing color palettes because, of course, anybody can find a color that they like. Finding 2 colors that you like that also work nicely together, that don't clash real bad, that's a lot harder unless one of the colors is white or black or a shade of gray. So we're going to be looking at trying to develop harmonious color palettes and doing more than just like finding a pretty palette that somebody else came up with. We'll look at what actually goes into that stuff. We will probably, depending on how hard we're charging, we also might go really deep and talk about color modeling on systems. That's becoming a bigger and bigger concern that I feel ethically obligated to cover. Because here's what will happen to you. You will get hired at the hot new startup in town, and you'll have half your hand in their app and half their hand in their big promotional website, and you'll start trying to reuse some of the sprites and other graphics from the app in your website, and you'll publish it to the web, and despite the fact that the exact same RGB values or the same exact HSL values are used in the app as on your website, the colors don't match up. It's like you're dealing with 2 different shades of blue. So we'll talk about some of the ways that color gets handled, right? Because Rosa, just like everything with high-density retina images and things like that, the color gamuts available on these devices are expanding. Does anybody know about color gamut? Good, you're in the right room. We can represent color in different ways, right? One of the most common ways that we can do it is to do a 3-point axis of red, green, and blue. And then we can create these sort of like weird teardrop shapes of the color that any given device can represent. Okay? And we'll assume that like the very fringes of this are what our human eyes are able to perceive, assuming we don't have color blindness or some other kind of color deficiency, assuming also proper brightness and contrast in the room where we're viewing something, right? So what we're getting now are these higher gamut displays that are capable of displaying a wider range of the true RGB spectrum like you would see in a rainbow. But what ends up happening is that the way that our colors get targeted, like in the RGB space, is that those are basically just getting stretched. So whereas on like a low gamut screen, the difference between 255, 255, 254, and the difference between that and 255, 255, 255, that becomes more noticeable because there is this wider spectrum. So, and then there's different ways that you can model this. Some systems tend to go a little less on the blue and a little bit more towards the green and the red. Right? Do we know about this phenomenon? How many of you use Flux? What does Flux do?
It changes the color temperature.
Yes. Let's see. So yeah. So what you do with Flux on a computer screen is that you can do like what I've got, where it actually changes the color temperature of the screen based on the time of day, wherever it is that I happen to be on the planet, and based on how high on the horizon the sun rises at that time of year. The idea is that once we get later into the evening, this thing goes almost an amber color, because by default, these displays throw off a lot of blue light. And if you've been outside within the last few months, you've probably seen that the sky is often blue. Why is the sky blue, Rosa? Anybody know why the sky is blue? I mean, yes, the supreme deity is created that way, but why? So yeah, what is it?
It was it's not the reflection. It's the oh my God, what was it? We did this in astronomy.
We did it in astronomy.
The particles are like reflected better than the red ones that come from the same.
Yeah, blue light scatters.
Yeah, scatter.
Right? And red light tends to get absorbed really quickly in our atmosphere for the temperature of the color in our sun and all these kinds of things. So that's a natural side effect. All right? We are creatures who used to live outside all the time. We didn't have so much as a candle or a fire when our evolutionary biology was coming together. So we respond to the sun coming up. All that blue light comes in, starts triggering all kinds of chemicals in our brains, right? The sun goes down, you get that nice amber, colorful sunset. You start releasing, melatonin, terrible with brain chemicals, but the stuff that makes you sleepy, that gets released. So what psychologists and other people have discovered is that these screens are highly disruptive to our sleep patterns because of the temperature of the light that they cast, which is a very raw, bluish light, right? Anybody got LED light bulbs where you live? You got to be careful choosing those things, right? Because if you get the stock, like, natural light LED bulbs, they're extremely blue. Watch this. Freeze this moment in your brain, because the city of Chicago is about to change all of the compressed sodium lights, right? All the street lights in Chicago, most of them are compressed sodium, which gives off that signature amber glow all over the city. They're replacing those with LED lights that are primarily in the blue area of the spectrum, and weird stuff is going to happen in the city. They just put one on the corner in my neighborhood, and that thing is shining right into some apartment's bedroom right now. Seriously, like, there's a lawsuit. I can't remember where it is. It's not in the city, but there's actually a lawsuit about another municipality that went to the blue LED lights, that it's basically making people unable to sleep because it's casting all this powerful blue light into their homes. Right? Because again, blue light scatters. And it transmits really, really well. You can see it from a long distance away, right? What's the high school across the way from us? Yeah, De La Salle. They've got red components in their sign, and they've got blue components in their sign. Some frosty, chilly evening, go up to the Green Line platform and just look at their sign when it's lit up at night. The side that's red, you'll probably be able to read really sharply, and the side that's blue will look all fuzzed out. Because again, the light scatters, right? And of course, when we're talking about designing websites that have to, like, be displayed on these torture devices that I've been describing the last few minutes, we have to make very particular kinds of choices about how we're going to use color. And that includes thinking about what happens when, let me see if I can just actually just bump this forward in time. Can I do that? How do you do that? It's been so long since I dickered around with this. Maybe can I? Oh, there we go. Okay, so do you see that? Right? So it starts casting more amber hues. So the question is, how do you make a color scheme that's going to continue to work if somebody's up at 2 in the morning with flux on and they've got, this very warm color versus what happens when they're on normal daylight like this thing is. Okay? All these different possible conditions, which are totally unknowable. There's no flux API that we can hit in the browser to know to set an alternative CSS color palette. That could be a fun thing to do, though, Manish, like create a color palette that does its own flux on a website based on the time of day and the geolocation API on a computer. That'd be cool.
So your computer changes to that color at night?
Yeah.
And you just don't notice it?
Oh, I notice it. And in fact, it actually makes me kind of like groggy and drowsy and a little warm and sleepy. Like, I notice that part of it. And it makes the night shift or whatever on the iPhone seem completely useless. It's like this gets a little bit, tiny bit oranger, but this thing gets a real deep afternoon orange. Yeah, and it's great because then I don't stay up on the computer all night. All right, flux. It's free and open source, and it pretty much runs, I think, on every operating system, right? That's on Linux, right? Okay. So we'll talk about more color stuff that week when we talk about color. Week 7, we're going to talk about material design and HCI guidelines. So we will be material design, right? Have we heard this? Anybody watched Google or an Apple keynote lately? Like they talk about material design. They'll get Johnny Ive talking about aluminium and material and things like that, right? So, and we'll talk about HCI guidelines. And I believe that week, if I've got them on the calendar, I don't. We're going to read the HCI guidelines for iOS. We're going to read the HCI guidelines for Android and things like that. Because somebody's actually sit down and said, here's how big something has to be on the screen in order for someone's, chubby little German sausage like I've got to touch it accurately so that you complete the purchase instead of canceling it or whatever it is, right? So we'll look at those guidelines and talk about how those designs or how those guidelines can play in your own designs. Be reading some Lepton that week. Week 8, this was a late breaking thing. Like I had this nagging thought. I'm like, this course is not complete. There's something that we didn't talk about. Boom, motion. Right? Motion is such a key part of interfaces. So we're going to do a week on motion. So we'll be looking at the CSS. That should actually read transition and animation properties. So a lot of the stuff that you used to have to dicker around, like, oh, let's load up jQuery so we can make this thing like move from one side to the other. Screw that. You don't need that anymore. You just do it all with CSS transitions. So we'll just keep our usual pattern of swapping classes and things like that with JavaScript and let all the motion and animation stuff happen at the CSS layer, which of course in most modern browsers is nice and tidily wrapped up with WebGL, so you actually get better performing motion when you're using the CSS transition properties versus when you do it in jQuery, where you've got jQuery doing millions of calculations in JavaScript, which is not exactly fast, especially if you're talking about motion, things like that. So we'll talk about that week. And we'll talk about keeping motion accessible and all of that that week as well. Is that a hand back there or just a little stretch? Just stretching, okay. Any questions so far? All right, so at this point we're almost halfway through the semester. Week 9, we're going to do a whole week on accessibility. We're going to talk about ARIA roles and responsive media, and we're going to do specifically with regard to accessibility. I don't think we did ARIA roles last semester in 361, did we? Okay. ARIA. It's the little girl from Game of Thrones. No, these are different. Accessible, rich internet application attributes. That's what they are. Okay. Then week 10 will be spring break, as always, because my birthday is always on spring break. And I'm always at a conference. Week 11, we're going to talk about ethics, activity theory, and responsive design. So that will be one of the theory-heavier weeks of the semester. We'll do some interesting stuff there. We'll talk more about activity theory and that hierarchy thing. You'll also have some really interesting reading. Anybody ever dealt with activity theory before or heard of it? Anybody's ever taken like a history of psychology class? Rosa, do we know where activity theory comes from? The Soviet Union. It was actually Soviet psychologists sort of like responding to Western cognitive psychology. Week 12, we're going to do a week on the guiding principles of usability. I believe of treating usability not just as a testing method, but also as a heuristic that you can use when you're designing things, right? There's certain things that we know that we should do or that we can learn that we should do before we ever inflict it on some poor human being, right? Forget, there was something I was doing today, and it was just absolutely getting on my last nerve that I had to do it every single time. What was it? I reconfigured an email client this morning, but I was having to repeat something. It's going to drive me crazy now. So before we get to testing, we're actually talking about like how do you bake usability in design and design usable interfaces. Week 13, we're going to do emotional design in here. So it'll be very emotional, Manish. Lots of tears that week. No, we're going to look at the use of emotion in design, right? Interesting studies that were done. For example, with an ATM. An interface for an ATM was designed, and it was tested first in Japan, and one was sort of like just very utilitarian, simple, straight to withdraw cash, blah, 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 blah. No aesthetics, no typography, nothing good, just pure function, right? And then one was designed that actually took some time to add some color, add some typefaces, become a little bit friendlier and personal. And what this study figured out was that people were able to withdraw money and make transactions and do all that stuff in the same amount of time, in the same amount of steps across both interfaces. But the people on the interface that had actually been designed with some aesthetic values, they reported that it was easier to use, that they had more fun doing it, and that they were able to get done what they were doing faster. Okay? So perception is everything. If you've got two products that do the exact same things in the exact same amount of time, but one is more fun, guess what most people are going to choose? All other things being equal. Now, of course, if it's Apple and it's more fun, and it also is $2,000 more fun, then they'll probably go with the other thing here. But not everything has to fall across those huge lines. So we'll talk about that. We'll read a book that week, or from it, called, what is it? It's Donald Norman's book. I think it's called Emotional Design, Why We Love or Hate Everyday Things. He's like the foil for Jacob Nielsen. Do we even know the name Jacob Nielsen? He's the crankiest person in usability. Don't worry, we'll talk a lot about that guy. I'm not a fan. All right, and then week 14, we'll actually get into usability testing methods. And one of the things that we're going to emphasize with this is that you're testing your project. You're not testing people. Like, that's the problem with like usability tests. It's like, we're going to test this on you. Like, we're going to test users. Like, no, we're going to test the product. And, you know, the user can do no wrong in that sense. All right. Week 15, we'll do some stuff with agile development, remote user testing, and experimental builds. So we're going to look at some ways to do A/B testing on the cheap. Anybody know A/B testing? Really? Are you guys going to sleep, or have you really nobody in here has ever heard of A/B testing before? Alpha, beta? Well, in Greek, yes. Do you guys not know that this is done to you all the time? Oh my God. Okay, so what sites will sometimes do is they'll come up with two competing designs, right? Here's our big sign-up page, and we'll have some big happy picture here of a smiling person and some big, you know, like, buy now button or something like that, okay? That's design A. And then design B will have the big smiling person, right? But we'll do a video here or something, right? And then we'll have some copy, and then we'll have something else. This is probably too distinct. And then we'll have the buy button down here. And then some piece of middleware will sit here, and it will serve either A or B at random to somebody accessing the page. And then what we do is we see, did more people go on to buy the thing based on design A, or did they go on to buy the thing based on design B? Okay. But this is completely opaque to users. And this happens all the time. Facebook is doing this all the time with little tiny things, right? How little micro components of their site work, or how a preview image or something is presented to you. Like, you are a research subject almost all the time and you don't even realize it. Okay? So we're going to talk about ways that you can actually do this and do it cheaply. Okay? A little bit of A&B testing. All right, and then I always have a week of parting material. We'll probably not have class on the 26th, but I'll pretend like we will. And we'll just talk about assessing front-end libraries and frameworks. So if you get in that horrible situation where you get some legacy product where all the documentation has been done in Bootstrap or some other abomination, how do you go about assessing those frameworks and talking about all the values that we'll talk about for usability and accessibility and all these other kinds of things? All right. And then final projects will be due May 3rd, 11:59 p.m. All right. Calendar page. Whoops. Say it again. Is there any question, or am I just hearing things? All right. Always important links at the bottom of the course site. Some of them don't work yet, or they work. Yeah, okay, good. That one's 404 because I haven't created it yet. Maybe I will here in the last few minutes of class. Essential tools and references are down here. And then my information here is, well, if you don't know me, I'm Dr. Carl Stolle. I'm Associate Professor of Information Technology Management. There's my email address. I'm on Twitter if you're into that kind of thing. I'm on GChat and Skype and pretty much everything else at some form of my name because I'm not creative in that way. My office hours are Monday over in Siegel Hall 208, or I'll always be signed in at Google Chat Skype if you ask me to. And you can always set up an appointment to meet me or meet me by chance. Message me anytime. When I wake up in the morning and I've got like the inbox from hell, I go straight to the stuff that I've gotten from students first. I don't really care about what my faculty colleagues need or anything like that. I always try to respond to students first. Okay, you guys go to the top of the pile. So take advantage of that and actually email me or reach me otherwise with your questions. Okay. All right. Any questions about the calendar, the course, any topics that you expected to encounter that are embarrassingly missing from this calendar that you want me to reconsider? That's an honest question. All right, well, if you think of anything, let me know, and we'll see if we can work it in. All right, projects. So here are the major projects. I'm not going to go through these. Well, I think we've got a time next week to go to the actual major project, but the first one will be an onboarding project where you're going to do a single-page design that tries to get somebody to do this kind of thing, to get them to sign up or join or do some kind of action. That'll be the first project. That'll be due. Right now this says February 22nd. I would not be surprised if this actually gets into March. We'll say the 22nd for now. Okay. We'll go over the project another day. Project 2 will be a web portal redesign. Right now I'm doing what I did last time around, which was a redesign of the My IIT portal, but I'm kind of bored of that. So it will be some kind of portal redesign. It might be IIT, it might be something else. That will be a team-based project, and it will be a redesign according to achieving a particular set of tasks. And then, yeah, there are only 3 projects for the course, so I will go home and fix that policy statement, and we'll just make all projects worth 20 points, right? And then put up another 5 points someplace else. We'll go over it Wednesday. But that will be, you'll take the portal that you created in Project 2, and then you will actually test the product with actual users that you observe and record and interact with and things like that. Okay? So those will be the 3 projects for the class. All right? Questions? Concerns? Yes, Zach?
Have you found a free, open source, whatever, screen capture thingy?
I've not, but I've also not been looking. We should probably start a thread about that on Basecamp and see if others have found it.
I think you use MonoSnap, I think.
What is it?
MonoSnap? M-O-N-O, snap, I think. I'm not sure though.
Yeah. Zach is asking about screen capture software for those of you who are puzzled by that, what appears to be an out of left field question. You post draft work in my class. So when we have a major project, it's not like you go off and be mysterious for 6 weeks or whatever and work on something and then you hand it in and you get a grade. You'll do an early draft that gets posted to Basecamp, and one of the requirements in the project is that you will respond to 3 other projects in the class and everybody else will respond to 3 other projects. So everybody will get a lot of feedback, and I will also respond to the draft projects as well, right? Because that's where the learning takes place. Like, yeah, you could go make a thing and I could say, oh, good job, but it would have been helpful for you to know earlier in the process what you were doing. So that's why Zach was asking about that. So we should start a thread on Basecamp. Okay. On the calendar page, I've got a link that right now is pointing to last semester's work. It's that all code written in class is available on GitHub. So this is from 361, but I want to fix all that stuff. So just by way of kind of getting us set up for the semester, I always have a demos directory up here where I write all the code for the week. Right now, all this has is all of the lint configuration files, which we'll be going over the next couple weeks, and it has a README file. So I'm going to initialize Git here, and I'm going to add all the files. I'm going to do Git status. There we go. Got everything lined up. Initial commit, linting files, and README for a fresh new semester, like that. Okay. So all the work you do, Git commits. If what I just did is completely mysterious to you, you need to start learning Git at the command line. Okay, no monkeying around with, oh, I downloaded the GitHub client from GitHub. No, like, you should be working at the command line because you are professionals who are someday going to deal with things where a repository gets mauled or somebody does something stupid and you're going to have to open up the ref log or whatever. You do not want to be that moment, be the one that you first look at the command line. Okay, so then the other thing we'll do is we'll post everything on GitHub, and I'm going to do this as well. I maintain a special Prof. Stolly GitHub repo, or a GitHub account where I put all my stuff from class. You get to look at my big grinning chimp face there. Oh, I'm not signed in. All right, so I'm going to create a brand new repository here. It will be called ITMD 362 Demos. Demo source code written in class, spring semester 2017. All right, that's public. I'm not going to initialize it because I've already created it by doing git init. And then the last thing I do is to add a remote. And I have to change this because I use two different accounts. So I have this fake github.edu, but that's just configured in my own SSH file. And now I can do git push origin master. Just like that. And so now if we reload here, boom, there's our linting files and everything all ready to go for Wednesday. And then the last thing I'm going to do, just to show you that I do this everywhere. So if I want to update our course site, I pull that from GitHub, edit this thing. All right, so available on GitHub. There we go. Let's fix this 362, not 361. You can do a quick diff to see what the change was. There we go. That URL is going to work now. Class demos. All right, so then when I deploy websites, I do two pushes. I do one that's to origin, that goes up to GitHub. And the last thing I do through the magic of Git hooks is I push to a remote that I've nicknamed Live, which is our live course website on the open web. And so now if I reload this page, all code written in class, boom, there we go, 362 demos. So we're all hooked up now, okay? All right. If you have questions, concerns, comments, talk to me after class, email me. Otherwise, I'll see you on Wednesday. We'll start doing some HTML. All right? Welcome back. Or welcome just. Yeah? Yes. Uh-huh. Sure. Sure. Yeah. Well, if you download the MSys Git distribution of Git for Windows, that gives you a command line that you can run on Windows, and it also gives you a bash-like environment, so you can use ls and things like that. So.
But yeah, are there differences in like commits or the line items?